First place in the A Fleet went to Stay Tuned, sailed by Tony Morelli. B Fleet went to Tonka, sailed by Harry Hibbs and Dick Velthan. Deke Klatt stormed the C Fleet in Hot Lava with 6 bullets, and Big Larry Thompson in War Paint captured the D Fleet honors. I asked Big Larry what he did to make War Paint go fast.
Well, before each race, Rossi, we always make sure the bottom's good and clean and do it just the day before the race usually, and that's really important. Keep the sails in good shape and the various lines and stuff so everything works good.
What kind of conditions does this boat compete the best in? High wind, light air?
It likes heavier air. It's the most competitive probably in 18 to 20 knots of wind.
Tell me about your crew, Larry.
We have a pretty diverse crew ranging, John Van Breda, I believe, is 66, and some of the younger crew members, are 17, so it's a pretty big spread, and we get along pretty well. It really helps out.
Do you do most of the driving?
I steer usually at the starts, and then I usually do the foredeck, and John Van Breda steers most of the race usually.
Who was your closest competition in the Scripps Series this year?
The Catalina 27, Micanopy, Ranger 23, Chabasco, they're both competitive. Tartan 30, Far Out was competitive also.
Is there a race you enjoyed the most in the Scripps Series?
The opening race I enjoyed.
What race was that?
That was a platform race. It was a coastal race.
Alamitos Bay Yacht Club hosted the Turkey Day Laser Regatta. Local laser ace Charlie Queen took the glory with 2 firsts and a third for the 3-race event. Richard Byron got a premature start in the first race and finished 10th, but he came back with a second and a third to take 3rd overall in the 20-boat fleet. Sailboarders were blown out of their chance for a very unusual style of racing. They called it a poker run, sailing from dock to dock, drawing poker cards. First to finish and best hand wins. Heavy wind made launching and maneuvering the boards extremely difficult, and race management decided to postpone to a later date, hoping for better conditions. Race number 1 of the fall series was sailed in a 6 to 8 knot breeze with a big swell. 30 boats in that race. A Fleet Tonka, sailed by Harry Hibbs, took first, and Gary Swinson sailed Volare in second. B Fleet winner was Bob Boys in Salt Shaker, Hot Lava second. C Fleet Steve Mangles in Shadowfax, and Far Out sailed by Glenn Chambers second. First to finish in the 19.9-mile race in just under 4 hours was Alden Glickman's Olsen 30 one-trick pony. New Zealand sailor Tony Ray was at the helm. I talked to Tony about his visit to California.
Been doing some sailing on a freefall, FAR 37 in San Diego a few weekends, and I went up to San Francisco for the big boat series and sailed on a Whistlewind, FAR 55. San Francisco is probably one of my favorite places for
in Ventura. And now let's go to Rossi.
Anacapa Yacht Club held their first big race of 1984, the Whale's Tail Regatta. 2 races on Saturday and 1 on Sunday. Sweeping the A Fleet with 3 wins in the Grand Prix 3030 Volare, Gary Swinson, who talked with me about the weekend's event.
We all wanted to win. Probably the most important factor was that we knew that there was another Grand Prix 30 out there that was, well, in fact, it was owned by a dealer that sells these boats, these Grand Prix, and they use another brand of sails other than the type that I make. So we definitely wanted to beat them.
Second place in A Fleet also went to a 3030 Fat Chance, co-skippered by Bill Williams and Fred Vance. Third place boat in A Fleet was Tonka, skippered by Dick Velthan, who also made some comments. It was 2 Grand Prix that finished in front of you. Why do you think they did so well?
Because they sailed better than we did. We suffered some dumbness. I think that's the primary reason. But I think those boats, even when we were in the group, seemed to go a little higher than we do. I was really surprised. I'm very impressed with the boat, the Grand Prix. We have our work cut out for us.
Miller Time made a sweep in B Fleet with 3 firsts. Skipper Kevin Miller told me some of the reasons for that win.
Just general maintenance and cleaning and making sure everything is in good condition. And also, we sailed more conservative than we normally do. At mark roundings, we took the spinnaker down a little earlier so we could round it closer, just things like that.
I asked Kevin's crew member Chris Mooney to explain the sailing conditions.
Well, it was light at first, but then it started to blow, and I like when it blows because it heels way over. Yeah, it was blowing like crazy.
What are some of the jobs you do on the boat?
I do a little bit of foredeck, a little bit of everything, kind of filling here and there. Mostly weather rail. Little weight, hold it down.
What do you think about girls on boats?
I think it's great. I think there should be more girls on boats because there's not that many. Maybe they're scared, chicken, afraid to get wet, but I don't care. I'll go out and do it. It's wild. It's worth it. It's great.
Deke Klatt took second place in the B fleet. Can you describe briefly the weather?
Wow, really good. It was typical right now. It's 12 to, around 12, pretty solid. Maybe gust to 15 or something like that, but real decent. Excellent weather.
Was it good weather for your boat?
Ooh, my boat likes everything, so I guess you could say it was.
How come you didn't win your class?
Whoa, tough question there, Rossi. Well, there are a lot of reasons. Basically, in the 3 races, we lost by a total of a minute and a half. In that minute and a half, maybe we could get 45, 50 seconds back. Basically, we just, the other boat sailed real good. We sailed excellent, but they sailed a little bit better.
B Fleet third place went to Kevin Hall sailing the Merritt 25 Outlaw. His boat was out of the water and on a trailer with the mast down immediately following Sunday's races. I asked Kevin why.
I'd like to trailer down to Marina Del Rey and sail in the Merritt midwinters, and that way we can sail class and sail against boats just like ours and kind of know where we're at. I've never sailed class before in this boat, so I don't know how well we're doing, really.
I saw you taking the boat out of the water today. What's the reason for taking it out so soon?
Well, I really need to do a lot of work on the bottom, and that'll also just keep it clean.
What kind of work do you do to the bottom?
I need to fill some holes and bubbles in the keel. The keel's kind of in bad shape right now. And just basically clean the rest of the hull and probably sand the bottom, get it smoother.
Sea Fleet win in the Whale's Tail Regatta was also taken with a sweep of firsts by Andy Gould in Dynamite. Second went to Carl D'Oria sailing Mirage, and third to Paul Dean sailing Amicus. For Yacht Racing on Sports Wrap-Up, this is Rossi. Pierpont Bay Yacht Club wound up their mini-series in good style last Saturday. The wind piped up to 18 knots, and Milt Ingram sailed his Cal 29 Class C into the top slot for the day. And while Winter Olympians waded through a blizzard in Sarajevo, Yugoslavia, Ventura Laser sailors spent a light air, sunshiny Sunday on the race course. 4 races in not more than 6 knots of wind put Deke Klatt 3 points ahead of Gary Swinson in total points for the day. It was his consistent performance that did it for Klatt, taking 2 firsts and 2 seconds. Swinson, with a second place in the first race and a disappointing 5th in the second race, rallied for firsts in the last 2 races. Craig Thomas sailed in for a consistent 3rd. The lighter weight and more youthful Sabbath sailors were duking it out in the West Basin again, and out of some real close tacking duels, Garrett Baum emerged winner for the day. Johnny Crew was 2nd and Chris Thorpe 3rd. Next weekend, Southern California becomes a yacht racer's paradise as the Southern California Yachting Association holds the midwinter regattas in various harbors along the coast. Some of our local boats will be heading south for class racing, while performance handicap fleet racing will be held here at Anacapa Yacht Club in Channel Islands Harbor. I talked with local handicapper Dick Velthan about the performance rating system.
I don't think much of PHRF. I think it's the best system that we have, and we have to try to improve it. But you know, I think you talked to Deke. Deke was totally dominant in his class last year, and I think that's the reason why his rating was lowered. Basically, the classes are changed this year, and he's having, you know, I think Deke's probably one of the best sailors around here, and you know, he got a 2nd, or what did he get this weekend? And you know, he's got a problem with the Santa Cruz 27. You know, it's all relative. It's never going to be, PHRF is never going to be perfect. It's just a matter of trying to do the best with the system that we got, and hopefully the people who are involved in the handicaps are trying to do the best job and being as fair as possible. Whether it's fair or not depends on your attitude, I guess, and I'm not going to say whether it is or not. I just hope that we're trying to make it fair, trying to make it good.
For Yacht Racing on Sports Wrap-Up, this is Rossi. 33 23 boats in all participated in the Southern California Yachting Association Midwinter Regatta here at Channel Islands Harbor. Anacapa Yacht Club hosted the event and divided these boats into 4 PHRF classes. That's the Performance Handicap Rating System. 2 races were sailed on Saturday in an ideal 15 knots of wind with a flat sea and clear skies. Leading Class A with a 1 and a 2 finish was Skysail, the Chope 40 sailed by Robert Grant from Santa Barbara Yacht Club. In Class B with a 2 and a 1 finish, Ivan Cox's Catalina 38 Marauder was tied with Fat Tuesday. That's Fred Vance's Grand Prix 3030, and it was sailed by Deke Klatt. Larry Thompson's Warpaint was leading the Sea Fleet with a 2 and a 1 finish on Saturday. And Bill Coveney and Salacious, the J30, was close behind with a 3 and a 2 finish. Vamos and Express 27 was first to finish in Class C in both races. Janie Woolbrandt was a crew member on board that boat. Janie, I understand there was some problem with the start line and the courses. Could you explain that?
Well, we like to have the first start or the first mark that we go around to be directly to weather from our start line. So that would make the first mark 90 degrees from the start line. Our course yesterday was more like 45 degrees from the first mark. That allows you to only go one direction towards that mark. When you have that type of a course, the longer the boat, the faster it can go because it does not need to change directions getting to that mark.
There was also a protest filed after Saturday's races in the D Fleet between Dynamite, the San Juan 24, sailed by Andy Gould, and Mirage, the Catalina, sailed by Carl Dioria. Frank Klatt was chairman of the protest committee for this regatta. Frank, could you explain the situation of that protest, please?
Well, it was a relatively simple protest, the port starboard situation. 2 boats heading towards the mark, both with spinnakers up, one on port, one on starboard. The port boat did not give way, and their spinnakers touched. And if any parts of the boats touched, then that's a collision. And then if neither boat files a protest, then some other boat may file a protest and throw both boats out. So the starboard boat filed a protest, and we heard it, and of course then we had to throw out the port tack boat.
And which was the starboard boat?
Dynamite was the starboard boat, Mirage was the port tack.
Dynamite is leading the D Fleet with a 1 and a 2 finish now. Sunday morning, there was a real strong question as to whether there would be any racing at all. A powerful easterly had started blowing, and the race committee wasn't sure if the marks would hold after they'd set them. Determined, though, Anacapa race officer Bill Hubbard powered out to the entrance and had a look. He came back and talked to some of the racers at the yacht club, and he warned the smaller yachts to use some discretion, and out they went for the start. The start was an hour and 15 minutes late on Sunday, but the wind gods were smiling with a shift to the prevailing northwesterly. Denny Howarth was crew on the B-class boat Tonka. Denny, would you like to tell us about Sunday's conditions out on the race course?
Well, it was really interesting. Prior to the race, we had this easterly blowing 20 plus, and just prior to the start, it all switched to the prevailing westerly, and had a real good day.
Was the sea flat, lumpy, what?
No, the sea was very flat, and we had a real good plus or minus 16, 17 knots, I guess.
Back to the midwinter results, there were some rating changes on Sunday and more protests regarding the start-finish line and the right-of-way challenge. After all were heard, in Class A, Dwight Rowe in Kite was first, and Adam and Alden Glickman took second in One Trick Pony. In B class, Deke Klatt and Fat Tuesday broke that tie with Marauder for first, and Harry Hibbs sailed Tonka in third. Larry Thompson in Warpaint took another first on Sunday to win the Sea Fleet. Bill Coveney in Salacious was second, and Noble Emperor third in that Sea Fleet. Andy Gould in Dynamite held his lead in the D Fleet, Paul DeFreitas in Micanopy second, and Chubasco, sailed by Dave Partridge, was third. Several local boats traveled south for class racing midwinters. In Merritt 25s, Kevin Hall at the helm of Outlaw took first. In Santana 525s, Tom Eccles and Steve Mangles took first in Shadowfax. Bob Boys' Santa Cruz 27, Salt Shaker took second in class. And in the Capri 30 class, Tony Morelli's Stay Tuned took first. Richard Byron, our local Finn champion, traveled to San Francisco for a West Coast Olympic qualifier. The conditions were very light, not really worthy of continuing the races, but they did. Richard took a 6th for the weekend, and he'll be continuing his quest for a slot on the Olympic start line in August. For yacht racing at the Midwinters on Sports Wrap-Up, this is Rossi. That is the owner and skipper of Hot Lava, a 24-foot boat, and I'll be crewing on that boat today. That boat's leading in the series right now. Dave, what are your chances of winning by the outcome of today's race?
It's real good, Rossi. All we got to do is get around the course in a decent shape in the top 5. On a day like today, seeing how there might be a weather pattern going through, we're going to sail with 5, just in case we need the extra crew members. Otherwise, we normally sail with 4.
For Sports Wrap-Up, this is Rossi. Light, fluky winds out of the southwest sent yacht racers across the start line for the first race of the Anacapa Yacht Club Spring Series. Oil platform Gilda was the first mark of the 20-mile course, and the hazy conditions made spotting it a little difficult. After rounding the rig to port, racers set the chutes for a spinnaker leg to Gina, the oil platform just off Channel Islands Harbor. Another port rounding and a finish at the entrance. Normally this race would be finished inside the harbor in front of the yacht club, but with the dredge in operation it was necessary to make a change. The boats were divided into 3 classes for this series. Volare took the lead in A Fleet. That's Jerry Boston's Grand Prix 3030. Walter Schneider's Olsen 30 Windsurfer was second, and the Capri 30 Gammon, sailed by Jack Rose, was third. In the B Fleet, Kevin Hall kept his winning momentum up from the midwinners in his Merritt 25 Outlaw. Larry Thompson made a good stand in Warpaint, his Yankee 30, for second place, and Mark Harris, who's known by many racers as Sparky, sailed his Wiley 28 First Light in third place. Top performance in the C Fleet went to a Coronado 25, Sea Sprite, sailed by Bob Hodge. Second, Sissy, sailed by Dwayne and Shayla Castle. Third, Carl Dioria sailing Mirage. And fourth, Freebie, sailed by Paul Robinson. Next week is the Port Royal Regatta. I spoke with veteran Southern California champion Gary Swinson. He talked about why he got into sailing lasers several years ago.
Well, I like the idea of sailing a high-performance boat, and it just looked like fun. And that's what originally got me interested.
What's high-performance boat mean?
High-performance boats are boats that are capable of going real fast and are capable of, large differences in the way people make them sail. Somebody who isn't that good of a sailor can't make a high-performance boat go as fast as somebody who can.
Gary's had phenomenal success as a skipper in various types of boats, even before he sailed lasers. I asked him what it took for him to qualify for the Laser Worlds back in 1977.
I would say, most of all, it was a lot of practice and training, exercise, but mostly sailing and sailing a lot after work. I used to sail with this guy named John Broom, who was a real good laser sailor, and we just sailed against each other as much as possible, almost every day. And when it came down to actually winning the district championships, we had the conditions down in where they had the race very similar to what we usually sail in here. It was real choppy and fairly windy.
And now, after a few years of being away from the laser, this is what he had to say about why he's back at it.
Basically, it's just back to the fun of it, and it's good practice for my other sailing activities, which is sailing mostly bigger boats.
Richard Byron sailing lasers for a different reason. The 1980 district champion has his sights set on the 1984 Olympic Fin Trials next April. Laser sailing is part of his training. I asked him why.
The boats are very similar. They're both single-handed dinghies with no ballast, require hiking, and the tactics are very much the same for the boats. Many Fin sailors trained in the laser and came out of the laser class originally.
You were 1980 Southern California District Champion in lasers. Is the competition level in a laser major regatta similar to that of Fins?
It's very similar. At the top of both fleets, most of the sailors you'll see are the same, and the exact same people. Most Fin sailors still continue to race lasers, and of course then the Fin sailors are racing Fins. It's very similar. I would say at the district level in that it thins out a bit down the fleet, but at major regattas there just really aren't very many soft people.
Is it possible for a novice sailor to learn sailing on a laser?
It's an excellent boat for that purpose. In my opinion, one of the best.
What motivates you to be so dedicated to the sport of sailing?
That's the really difficult question. I think basically I just really enjoy it a lot. It's a marvelous environment, and
it's also a place that you're alone a lot, but you're not. Being out on the ocean, I think sometimes I've often, as a joke, said that racing is an excuse. It gives me an excuse to go out and practice.
Results of that first Frostbite laser race: high winds and a big swell set the committee boat rocking and rolling as it motored to the start line. In an act of compassion for the committee, racers suggested the race be canceled. There was no argument. The next edition of the Frostbite series is November 27th. On a different note, when the girls took to the sea in the Ventura Yacht Club Ladies Helm Series, after a rain-soaked start in a fairly calm sea, the wind died and the race was abandoned. It's to be sailed at a later date. Final results of the Mark Ball Trophy Series, that's the Anacapa Yacht Club event for Sabbats. First place in A Fleet, Craig Mooney, and in B Fleet, Craig Brindheiser. There's good news from San Diego. Deke Klatt took his Wavelength 24 Hot Lava down for that Santana Regatta and brought home the glory. Out of 4 races, a first every time. For Sports Wrap-Up, this is Rossi.
Of the 80s. And now, let's go to Rossi in the Channel Islands Harbor.
Rain-soaked but enthusiastic, competitors cast off the dock lines and headed out for the start line of the second race in the Fall Series. I talked to Deke Klatt about who he predicts will take home the trophies in that 3-race series.
Well, I'd have to say in our class, my boat would have to be. Right now we got a second in the first race, and if the conditions hold up like they should, we should be very competitive in the next 2. And hopefully take the win away from Saltchicker, who won the first race.
Okay, that's the B Fleet. What about the A and the C Fleet?
Well, the A Fleet, the strong boat there has to be Gary Swinson racing the new Santana 3030. The boat's looking real good, and it's real fast. In the C Fleet, it would have to be Shadowfax right now. They won the opening race, and they look real good for all conditions.
Bob Boyes, skipper of the notorious Saltshaker, now leading the B Fleet in the Fall Series, was not without comment.
We look pretty strong in the first race, and I hope to go on to do really well in the rest of the races. We're out there mainly to have fun, but winning is all that much more fun.
Well, that second race never got off the start line. More than half an hour before the first gun, the race committee sent out a radio communication of postponement. Wind and sea conditions not being that extreme, it can only be speculated that there was some concern for the size of the swell in the Ventura entrance where the race was scheduled to finish. Next race in this series will be December 17th and the final race January 7th. This rescheduling could possibly change the outcome of the series because some competitors had planned to be racing in other harbors on that January 7th date. Laser days continue. December 11th, Kevin Hall will defend his lead in the series around the triangular course just outside the Ventura Harbor entrance. Sabbats will be racing inside the Ventura Harbor in the West Basin area. You can watch them from Marina Park. And next week, I'll also have results of the final day in the Ventura Yacht Club Ladies Helm Series. 2 races are scheduled, one making up for the race that was abandoned due to a lack of wind. I talked to one of our area's top lady skippers, Liz Mall, and here are some of her comments from that interview. Her favorite boat to sail on?
Well, I'd have to say my boat right now. Race boat, I'd like to stay in the 30-foot range. I raced a Capri 30 in the Ladies Invitational, and I enjoyed that boat. A little tender and did need a lot of weight on board, but it was a very easy boat to handle. And the smaller ones, of course, are better.
Do you prefer racing or cruising?
I prefer racing. I went out day sailing once and I could only stand it for about 2 hours. It was so boring, I couldn't stand it. Cruising to the islands is fun. We just got our new boat, and so we'll be doing that this summer. But I much prefer racing.
The Channel Islands Harbor Parade of Lights is Saturday evening, December 10th. If you get a chance, make it down to the harbor to watch. I'll see you next week on Sports Wrap-Up. This is Rossi. Last race of the 1983 calendar for Anacapa and Ventura Yacht Clubs this last Saturday. The buoy at Mandalay Power Plant served as one end of the start line, and at the other end was Wes Golan, performing race management duties for the final time this year aboard Anacapa's committee boat, once an urchin diving vessel, Fujimo. Boats started with spinnakers up or hoisted just after the gun. The breeze was light but very chilly as competitors headed for the first mark of the course, oil platform Gilda, spinnakering into a sloppy sea. The wind clocked around, chutes were doused, and all the boats made their final approach to the rig under Genoa, rounding the platform to starboard in long-awaited for and welcome sunshine. It was a classic downwind leg back to Mandalay Buoy as yachts jibed from one side of the course to the other, hoping to gain precious distance on the competition before the reach to Channel Islands and finishing in front of Anacapa Yacht Club. Results for that third race in the fall series: Class A first place, the Grand Prix 3030 Valari, sailed by Gary Swinson. Second place was Joe Gerhardt, sailing as Olsen 30 the Dancing Bear, and third was Harry Hibbs and Dick Belfin in Tonka. B-class results: in first place for the second time in the series, Salt Shaker, sailed by Bob Boys. Second place, Hot Lava, sailed by Deke Klatt, who's predicted he'll win this series, and third place, Kevin Hall, sailing Outlaw. Sea Fleet honors went to Steve Mangles and Tom Eccles in Shadowfax again, and second place to Carl Dioria in Mirage. Third place went to Dick Weimer in Miranda. Certainly worth noting here, a boat whose finish position was in the middle of the fleet, a word of encouragement to lady racer Connie Larson, who is enthusiastically skippering the only all-female crew in the fall series aboard her Ranger 33 Orca. Local sailor and boat rigger Bernie Johnson had a comment about girls and boats.
Oh, I think they're real fine. I'm really glad to see them tackling a sport that seems to have a history of being all male.
Also this weekend, Ventura Harbor lit up for the holiday season with the annual Parade of Lights. Close to 20 boats, power and sail, decorated in Yuletide fashion to cruise through the harbor and Ventura Keys. There were an estimated 10,000 spectators, and the 30-foot powerboat Floating Loan 2 took overall sweepstakes prize. For Sports Wrap-Up, this is Rossi wishing you a Merry Christmas. 3, 2, 1. Last July, two things came to Ventura from New Zealand. One of them was Vegemite, and the other was Tony Ray. Tony, why did you decide to come to Southern California?
I eventually came across to do the Transpac, and hoping that I'd get here on time to do it. And it ended up I didn't get here early enough, so I just wanted to do some more sailing. And I started sailing on a Olsen 40. And delivered it back from San Diego to Ventura, and I've been sailing with the Glickmans and a couple of other Kiwi guys for most of the time I've been here, like for the last 5 months, and in between times just been sailing on whatever boats came up at the time, and in between working with Swinson Sails.
Does sailing...
Okay, go ahead, since you're ready.
3, 2, 1. Does sailing here differ much from sailing in New Zealand?
The conditions are pretty similar in the way of climate and temperature and stuff like that. At certain, apart from the different seasons, but the sailing we have in New Zealand is what I'm used to is a lot more like in a harbour and flatter waters compared to a big swell over here that you've got to get used to in Ventura, and we seem to get a lot more wind regularly compared to here.
What about the boats? Are the boats much different there?
We've got a lot more fractional rig boats.
What's a fractional rig boat?
Fractional rig boat is a boat that has headsails which don't go to the top of the mast, and they have smaller spinnakers and favoured in heavy air. But most of our boats, racing boats, probably would be fractional rig boats, apart from a lot of classes which. Oh, hang on, no, I'm getting into it, too involved now. Yeah.
Like I can edit things out.
Yeah. Okay.
What about the size of the boats? Are they the same?
We've got so many different classes over there that we're ranging from like 50 and above feet down to a lot of small, like 7-foot racing dinghies that have really big classes. For instance, like a P class, which is sort of like your Sabot classes for starting off sailing, and the dinghy classes over there are just so there's so many classes in dinghies that there's not really enough people to have big classes apart from the real popular ones. But there's also big classes in keelboats as well. The ones I've been sailing on down there for the match racing and stuff, Stuart 34s, they've got, they can get up to 30 boats, and that's a fairly old class. And there's a lot of other classes that get just as many boats that are one design.
We're on.
Welcome aboard Pegasus in New York 36. We're out here outside Channel Islands Harbor getting ready to start the last race of the Seashell Regatta. We've got 8 people on board today, and Gary Swinson is our helmsman.
Get up on the rail here. Just get some running back on it.
Don't raise yet. Go. Give me that pole back. Getting down. Going down, lean full. No. Sheet. Pull back more. Pull up some. Spinnaker needs. Andy. On the halyard, blue halyard, you got an eye. Spinnaker can go up some. Yeah. Clear. You want to let some of the main halyard tension off too. Yeah, main halyard's pretty cranked. Pull down, pop him up down. Okay. So pulling that sheet into the running back pretty quick. you get a time on it?
Up here, I'll nail you.
Here we go, guys.
Hey guys. I got the name and the guy. You got it?
Okay, go. Pull back. More guy off.
Oh, hit that log,
Pull
somebody,
up.
quick.
Pull back. Pull back. Pull back and pull up.
That's the dove, isn't it, that overstood like crazy?
Yeah, well, that behind it is what's waiting.
Bob, what do you think about putting this sheet in that block here? Maybe make it easier?
Yeah, it's got. They really should be run on the inside of all the lifelines.
Well, I don't think we really want it up there because we want the spinnaker to rise up.
Yeah, now this is good.
Trim it over there on the port
Yeah,
side.
remember about the
I don't even have it.
remember about the topping list. Go top that. Top it all the way off like you did last time.
Roscoe.
Yeah.
Make sure you pull up on that Genoa on the spinnaker guide. Pull it up to get it out of the jaw when we float it.
Okay.
Like you did last time, remember?
Yeah, I understand.
That
Is
jibbing.
it off the right way?
Ready to flood? Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Lift up, Rob.
Running back, stay off over here. Running back there.
Drop that there.
Gets into that. God. Heads up. Unreal.